Hey there, hunting family, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Tracks and Tackle, brought to you by Menser Outdoors. I'm the Arrow Eagle, your host, and today we're taking flight into the world of migratory bird hunting. In this episode, we're in for a special treat. Joining us is a true expert in the field, a seasoned waterfowl hunter and a champion duck caller, Jonathan Knopp. He's here to share his wealth of knowledge and experience, helping us explore the thrill and challenges of pursuing these magnificent creatures across their migratory routes. We'll be delving deep into gear, strategies, and unique experiences that define the art of migratory bird hunting. So whether you're a seasoned waterfowl enthusiast or just curious about this dynamic form of hunting, you're in for an incredible journey. Let's not wait any longer. With Jonathan's insights, we're ready to spread our wings and soar into the world of migratory bird hunting. Are you ready? Let's take flight. All right, so today we have a guest on the show, Jonathan Knopp, friend of mine who actually we just were acquainted not too long ago through a mutual friend.
Yep.
And that's the way it works, right? When you run into one another, we have a mutual friend who has had their child was having their baby's birthday party. And, the guys are sitting around the table and we're just shooting the breeze. We start striking up this conversation about hunting and the outdoors. And we're like, yeah, all right, man, we're brothers now, right? And I think I've met you before on a couple of occasions, but we never had the chance to actually connect.
Yeah, I think so.
So I was talking to Jonathan about, his experiences, and he's got quite the resume. So just like most of you guys out there listening to this podcast, he started hunting from a very young age, so it's born into his blood. And when you get the itch as a teenager, probably from about 16 to 21, he started to dedicate himself to waterfowl and his pursuit of that arena in the hunting world. And so as a young man, professionally guided for several years, supported the startup of a couple of different guide services, competitive goose and duck caller, securing multiple top 5 finishes at state championships, and competing and calling competitions across the West Coast. And some of your top finishes were first in the novice duck category, second in both state duck and state goose calling, and that was Washington State.
Yep.
And so you've served as a consultant for several other guide services and very well respected in the hunting community. And I'm really pleased to just be able to call him a friend more than an acquaintance. We're building that relationship. We invited him to come onto the podcast, so I just want to welcome Jonathan to the podcast today.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here, and great just to spend more time getting to know you as well.
Yeah, that's what it is. When you connect with people that have like sort of the same passion, it's really easy to just carry on conversations and stuff. And I'm so glad that we were able to make this happen. So yeah, basically what we're going to talk about in today's episode is we're going to talk about migratory bird hunting, because I think you have this expertise in that world, and I certainly don't. I've done some duck hunting. I've traveled and gone south and have had some really fun experiences. I see how easily you can get hooked on it. It's a ton of fun. Just going to hunting camp, period. You can have a lot of fun. Doesn't matter what you're hunting. But maybe as we just get started, if you don't mind, just give us a little bit of your journey into migratory bird hunting and tell us, how you developed your passion for it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny that this is something I've had to put a lot of thought into, because it's been such a deep piece of my life and my childhood for so long. I didn't necessarily know where it came from, and so I was thinking about this, and it occurred to me. I grew up. I come by hunting naturally, both sides of the family. So both sides of my family were ranchers. one in North Idaho, others in eastern Washington, which is actually a semi-arid desert. And so my dad grew up farming and ranching on about a 7,000-acre farm, and loved the outdoors, loved hunting, loved fishing,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he shot, the deer hunting was the big thing, and coyotes and waterfowl and small game. And I just remember as a kid growing up hearing these stories from him of having what's called a pit blind, where it's buried underground. It's the top of it is level with the surface of the ground, and spring-loaded doors. And he'd tell me these stories about geese coming in, landing almost on top of his blind, or a coyote sneaking up 20 feet away from him in his blind and popping out and shooting with the shotgun. And so I from a young age, I just remember hearing these stories. And so I was given probably a BB gun. I don't remember. I probably was around 7 or 8. And from that day on, I mean, I was outside shooting everything.
Got you started, right?
Got me started. And where I lived, I mean, we didn't really have many rabbits or squirrels. It was pretty much just birds.
Yeah.
So I spent, hundreds of hours and tens of thousands of BBs probably out there shooting at birds. And I think that's part of where that comes from. Moving on a little bit later, my next oldest brother, when he went through hunter's education around 14, I couldn't. My parents wanted me to wait until I was 14 as well, or 13. And so I was 11 at the time, and man, I would not let them leave without me. They would, go out, duck hunting, go out, small game hunting and stuff. And this one memory that is just impressed upon me, that I believe is where my passion comes from. It was probably that year, that November, when I was about 11. There's a cornfield that's probably 70 yards from my parents' house, due south. And that thing just got loaded full of ducks and geese. I mean, we're talking thousands of birds. And I don't use that as an exaggerated term. I mean, it was
literally
loaded.
thousands of
Literally
birds.
thousands. And so my dad tells my brother, hey, let's go sneak out to the edge of the field. We have irrigation canals. So they take water off the Columbia River and then run it along these canals out to out around fields, and that's what the sprinklers draw off of. So we have canals surrounding the field. So it's like, let's get in these canals. We're going to sneak up, and they wouldn't let me go with them, but I just stood there in the window just watching this thing unfold, and they snuck out there and were able to pop up, and my brother shot the first round. He shot a goose, I think, and then they all flew up, flushed up in the air, and my dad said, hey, told me later, hey, hand me the shotgun. So my dad takes the shotgun, shoots once, hits a mallard hen, shoots twice, and hits 2 ducks with 1 shot. So here my dad comes back. My brother has a goose. My dad has 3 ducks with 2 shots. And I was just thought my dad was just John Wayne. I mean, he was the coolest thing.
I think that's the way that it is for a lot of us that grow up, and we have either older siblings or our parents or our hunting mentors.
Yep.
We really do look up to them.
Yeah,
because they're the ones that get you started.
Yeah.
And part of the heart behind our show and why we started this podcast is to, we want to inspire people to help the next generation get into it, because somebody invested into our lives and got us interested in just being outside and doing outdoors type activities. So love that story. We always look up to our mentors, and it's nice that was your dad. All right, well, Jonathan, tell me just a little bit. I want to learn about migratory birds and the different types of bird. I mean, look, I know this is what I know. The birds fly south for the winter, right? They want to get in the different climate when the cold temperatures set in. But there are different species that migrate, and the hunting that goes along with that. I wasn't brought up around that, so if you can educate me and our listeners a little bit on, you just provide an overview maybe on various migratory bird species that are hunted.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The basics of migratory bird species. Just a little overview is ducks are typically divided into 2 categories. You have what's called dabbling ducks or puddle ducks, and then you have diver ducks. So the difference is between whether they dive underwater for food or whether they stay at the surface to skim. So under puddle ducks, just giving you an overview, you have the mallard, which is what most people think of when they think of a duck. They picture a green-headed, duck with gray and brown on its back, And then, so you have, under puddle ducks, you have mallards, gadwall, widgeon, teal. You have green-winged teal, blue-winged teal, and cinnamon teal. You have widgeon, you have Eurasian widgeon, which are rarer. And then you have northern shovelers. That's the majority of it. I guess there's also wood ducks and black ducks. So, and the very rare mottled ducks down in the south. So, that's the overview of puddle ducks. As a general rule, they all surface feed on plants and insects. So they don't eat any fish, and they don't eat any fish. Sometimes they'll eat crustaceans, but that's a little bit more rare. They prefer seeds and insects. And then you have diving ducks who also don't feed on fish. They dive underwater, eat seeds and insects and plants, and so your diver ducks are like your bufflehead, redheads, canvasback. You have sea ducks they're in there, like harlequin, scoter, eider, king eider, common golden eye, Barrow's golden eye. I mean, the
list goes on, right? Yeah.
Yep. So
in your experience, like what's the easiest duck to hunt versus the most difficult duck? Like, does the type of duck matter? I mean, I imagine the little bit of duck hunting that I've done.
Yep.
I always hear, I hear stories about these teals.
Yeah.
And some of these ducks move pretty dang quick.
Yep. They do. So I would say in terms of hunting, this might sound might seem kind of odd to some people, but probably the easiest duck to hunt is the mallard. I mean, there's more mallard decoys made. They have we have more. I mean, they're one of the few ducks whose calls we can actually recreate well and actually have a conversation with, and try to manipulate in their behavior to do different things. So I would say that the easiest by far are mallards. The most difficult, I mean, when it comes to hunt, if you're talking about like, I'm going to set out to intentionally hunt these, you end up getting into unpredictable duck species. And when it comes to, I think that's how you'd separate it. The most predictable duck is probably mallard.
Okay.
Some diver ducks are pretty predictable, but most predictable is mallard. The least predictable is like a teal. So, because those things, they come and they go. And I know people like Phil Robertson and stuff like that, they, come out with teal calls and they try to call them. I mean, I've shot hundreds of teal. I've called it lots of teal, and I tell you what, they do what they want to do.
Right.
So I would say
not predictable at all.
No.
Well, that's enjoyable, when you don't want to go out and always know, like we have a plan.
Yep.
But things don't always go according to plan, so.
Yeah, absolutely. And then with geese, so there's other migratory birds besides ducks and geese. I know the most about ducks and geese. There's also sandhill cranes, doves, things like that. But with geese, there's you have Canada geese. You have a cackler, which is looks just like a Canada goose. It's smaller, but it's technically its own species with its own subspecies. So with the Canada goose, how much detail you want, but the Canada goose, you have what's called the Western Canada goose. That's what we have. Where I am also called the Hutchinson's goose. And then you have the Atlantic goose, the interior goose. You have the lesser, and you have there's one more that I'm forgetting. I think the giant. So you have about seven subspecies, 6 that you're really ever going to run into, and then with cacklers you have the taverners, the Aleutian, the true cackler, and then you have the last one's name always escapes me for some reason. Oh, Richardson. So I just had to look at my notes briefly. So, so the difference between cackling geese and Canada geese, they look the same. A cackler is about the size of a fat mallard.
All right.
So they look like a goose. They, that's about where it ends. I mean, they sound kind of like a goose, but I mean, they fly like a duck. They respond to calling very much like ducks. They fly in huge groups. I've shot lots of cacklers, but predominantly we have Western Canada geese and Lesser Canada geese where I come from. So lessers are just like what it sounds like. They're smaller goose. They're about halfway between. I would say they're about 3/4 the size of the Atlantic Canada geese that we see here in Pennsylvania. About 3/4 the size, and the Western Canada goose is I mean, it's a good 4 or 5 inches taller than them.
So they're bigger out west for sure.
Much bigger, yeah. And we get some giants too. There's 4 flyways in the United States. So there's the Pacific Flyway, the Central Flyway, the Mississippi Flyway, and the Atlantic Flyway, and different based upon the breeding grounds up north in the Arctic and in Alaska and Russia, where our birds come from. There's just a different proportion depending on breeding grounds. So we get a lot of bigger geese over on our side, and here we get smaller geese. But sometimes you guys get more geese and more smaller geese, and we get fewer big geese. So.
Yeah, I don't understand that. Like, I've never been taught any of this, so this is fascinating
Sure.
to me.
Yeah.
So like understanding those flyways, like the patterns, the migratory patterns,
Yep.
and I know that I've gone down and I've hunted geese early December in Arkansas,
Yeah.
and when you talk about not exaggerating thousands of birds in the water and the air, like. You don't have to be a good shot. You don't have to be like we've gone out. I've seen guys that have never gone hunting before, and we put them in a blind, and with somebody that can call, and ducks are coming in.
Yeah,
and that's how you get hooked.
It is.
When there's a little bit of action. In some of our other episodes, we've talked about getting that next generation excited about hunting or out fishing, outdoors, anything like that. And the key really is seeing activity.
Absolutely.
So I was interviewing a guest a couple episodes ago, and they were just saying, like, setting somebody in the deer blind, like out here in Pennsylvania in woodland country, we sit and we wait.
Mm-hmm.
It's not spot and stalk like it is out in the Midwest or in the Western states.
Yep.
And, when you're a young guy, or even if you could be older and just getting into hunting, like, it can be boring.
Yeah.
So you have to have an appreciation
for
the anticipation of that. We like to say 30 seconds of fun will make an 8-hour day for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So duck hunting is a ton of fun because there's activity. When they're shooting, there's good shooting.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And what you said about the numbers is so true because with, when you're in a flyway and in a part of a flyway, so birds, I mean, they follow basins and rivers and geographical features. So if you're in their flyway where they want to be, I mean, you'll be out hunting and you won't stop seeing birds, all day. So like if you're goose hunting, geese leave the roost and fly, from let's say an hour after shooting light to about noon or 11:30 in the morning, and that's when they're coming out to feed, and then they feed, then they go back to the roost that evening. And in the early season, they fly earlier, they loaf, they go back to loaf, go back out to feed, come back. But without getting too caught up into the details,
right?
Yeah, so you see birds flying in the air though for the entire time. So it's different than deer because for that 4-hour window, you're going to constantly have an opportunity to potentially, have birds, come in.
You're just waiting for somebody to respond to that, to that conversation that you're having with the duck call, right?
Yep. And the flag and the decoy spread. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, love it. Well, let's shift gears a little bit. I want to talk about conservation and ethics. Certainly that's important to the hunting community. And if you can, just, talk to us a little bit about insights into efforts that are made to preserve bird populations and their habitats. I know, like, where I hunted, you buy a duck stamp, and that stamp goes, the money goes to conservation efforts in that state. So I'm sure you can expound on that for us.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So there's federal, state, and then I would call it more public, like organizations like Ducks Unlimited and Delta Waterfowl, things like that, where they take the brunt of that conservation workload. Conservation is really, really important right now. We see this all across the flyway, especially here on the East Coast, where one of the biggest issues here in the lower 48 states that we see is a reduced access to land, not just to hunt, but land that historically has been nesting habitat, for ducks and geese that's being taken over to build homes and developments, or even pollution. It can be a big issue in some states where I think of again Maryland. Had some of these issues where Maryland was the originator of commercial duck and goose hunting. It was where goose
Ton of
hunting grew from.
waterways,
Yeah,
a
yeah,
ton of wetlands. Yeah,
yeah. That's where this whole all of us who are duck and goose hunters, whether we know it or not, inherited this from the Eastern Shore, and from Maryland and from even these here out east. And sorry, all that to say, the biggest efforts that are being done right now are preserving the breeding habitat and up sorry in the lower 48 states. And then up north in Canada and up in Alaska and areas where they breed. And yeah, so I'd say the best thing that people can do to invest in conservation is really to get plugged into their local waterfowl chapter. So most states have a waterfowl association that they can join. Not to mention, I mean, there's Delta Waterfowl and Ducks Unlimited chapters. All
sure,
across
yeah,
nearly every state. And they've it takes a lot of money to have a lot of sway. And
yes,
we need lobbyists and we need money put into this. So the biggest thing I think people can do is actively volunteer and support. One of the other things that I was thinking of was going out and actually physically participating in the activities that go on. I mean, they put out across nearly every organization, they'll put out duck boxes. They'll clean areas. They'll go work on on preserves or waterfowl refuges and stuff like that. And there's a lot of opportunities for volunteer work. If you look for it. So
yeah, and that's like outdoor activity too,
yeah,
right? So it's not
absolutely.
all about fishing, hunting, scouting, etc. I mean, it doesn't. There are tons of different things. I just spent the weekend, hiking.
Yeah,
And just appreciating the beauty of the outdoors.
absolutely.
And getting out. So, like, from a conservation perspective,
Yep.
if you can volunteer, if you can get outside,
Yeah.
you're doing something to give back,
Yep.
and that really adds up. So that leads me into like my next, I guess we'll parlay into my next question or thing that I'd love to hear your take
Sure.
on is, hunting ethics and how, like, ethical hunting, what can we do
Yeah.
as hunters when we're hunting migratory birds like ducks and geese
Yeah.
that, it helps to preserve bird population and their
Yep.
habitat as well. So,
Yeah.
certainly not destroying the habitat
Yeah.
and not overtaking the population because you want the population to be stable.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. So with with migratory waterfowl, I'd say that there's less ethical considerations that have to be made to some extent for preserving habitat. We talk about not damaging habitat. Preserving habitat. What's unique, I think, about waterfowl is that with deer and other animals, they tend to stay within their same geographical area. So if you're damaging, even pheasant, deer habitat,
Right.
that's the habitat they're in year round.
Yeah.
More or less. Waterfowl, though, they breed up north where they aren't being hunted or pressured other than natural predators. And so when we encounter them on their migratory flight downwards, or down south, southwards, there's not a lot that we do that can damage the habitat. Typically, we're hunting grasses that are dead, in lakes and fields and things like that. And I think the ethical consideration comes lies more in following laws and regulations, that are put there in place to protect waterfowl populations. There's a bag limit for a reason.
Right.
It's to ensure that not too many birds are harvested, but also that enough birds are harvested. We don't want overpopulation disease that will kill and wreak far more havoc on the ecosystem sometimes than.
Yeah, that's kind of a universal,
Absolutely.
It's important that the herd does, or in this case, the flock gets thinned out a little bit, but certainly we don't want to overhunt as well. So it's finding that balance.
Yeah.
Nature takes care of itself to some degree.
Yeah.
We don't. But this is all part of conservation and why hunting's so important.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, so I think with these ethical considerations, the harvesting of animals legally is important too. I mean, areas of contention in waterfowl are baiting. Baiting's illegal, but we have
there's always a but.
There's always a but. Yeah, there's a lot of, especially you see this in the Midwest. I mean, we have plenty of it where I come from too, but there's a lot of flooded corn and flooded fields, and right now, federally under law, you legally you can flood a standing field that has not been harvested.
Mm-hmm.
Flood it, hunt it. It's not considered baiting, but if you go and this is where the contentious part is. If you harvest the field first and flood it, you can sometimes have issues around the state. Or if you come through harvest a cornfield and you have a corn spill, you can't hunt that field until that spill's been cleaned up and been cleaned for 2 weeks, right? So those are some of the things that are under debate right now.
Savvy hunters will always find a way.
They will,
to work the system.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's part of the ethical piece of this too.
Yeah,
we're wanting to. It's not just the harvesting of the animal, but it's the conservation of the animal and the species as well. Well, hunting family, that's going to wrap us up for this episode of Tracks and Tackle. We had to make the decision of whether to let this interview run in its entirety. And what we ultimately decided is we're going to carve this migratory bird chat session into 3 separate episodes. So you just listened to part 1. We will be back next week with part 2. Big thank you to Jonathan for being an invaluable part of this journey and helping us understand the importance of responsible hunting practices and the essential role that hunters play in conserving our precious wetlands and waterfowl habitats. With that said, our adventure will not be over. Next week, we're going to get into the nitty-gritty. We're going to be talking gear, strategies, and techniques that every waterfowl enthusiast should know. So stay tuned for more exciting and informative content as we continue our exploration of migratory bird hunting. And as always, a heartfelt thank you to our loyal listeners. Your support and enthusiasm fuel our passion for sharing the outdoor experience. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so you won't miss a single wing beat of our upcoming episodes. And for now, remember to cherish your hunting experiences, respect wild places, and keep the spirit of conservation alive.